Welcome to Read Naturally's webinar on 1-Minute Reader Live Basics. We do have a handout that accompanies this presentation. You can find that in your reminder email, and it will also be located in the chat box shortly. As many of you probably are aware, 1-Minute Reader Live is part of the Read Live suite of programs. And today we're going to cover 1-Minute Reader Live, why it works. We're going to cover placing students within the program. It's optional, and we'll talk about the different options. We will talk about how it works. And finally, we'll discuss meeting the various needs of students using 1-Minute Reader Live. So Read Live is a suite of programs that includes the 4 programs on your list: Read Naturally Live, Word Warm-Ups Live, 1-Minute Reader Live, and Read Naturally Live Espanol. As you probably know, Read Naturally Live is our flagship fluency and comprehension program with work on phonics and the phonics series, and additional support for vocabulary and spelling. Word Warm-Ups Live is a phonics program. We have released our latest level, level 3. So it includes 1-syllable words, 2-syllable words, and then a level on multisyllabic words. And that program primarily focuses on fluency with, on phonics with support for fluency, spelling, and phonemic awareness. The option in the lower right is Read Naturally Live Espanol to teach students to read in Spanish. And what we are talking about today is the only program within the Read Live suite of programs that is an independent reading program, and that's 1-Minute Reader Live. The primary focus in 1-Minute Reader Live is fluency, and there's strong support for vocabulary and comprehension as well. 1-Minute Reader Live is very similar to Read Naturally Live. So I want to talk about some of the main differences so you can kind of understand the comparison. Read Naturally Live is the intervention. 1-Minute Reader Live is an independent program. So students who are using the intervention, Read Naturally Live, typically are Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention students, special education, Title I. It's often used in a pull-out or a push-in program. Whereas anyone using 1-Minute Reader Live, it could be a mainstream student during independent reading time. It could be an intervention student during independent reading time or as extra work at home. So it's really for anyone who could benefit from structured independent reading, who is reading from a 1st through a mid-5th grade reading level. And that's another difference between the two as far as content is concerned. Read Naturally Live includes 29 levels from 1st through 8th grade reading level. We have different series in Read Naturally Live, including sequenced, phonics, and idioms. 1-Minute Reader Live has 6 levels from E, which stands for early 1st grade, and then through 5, which is mid 1st grade reading level. And we do have stories grouped by theme. There is teacher involvement in Read Naturally Live. So this is for students who have been identified as needing extra support with reading, and so they are in an intervention setting where they have a ratio that makes it possible for a teacher to work directly with students. 1-Minute Reader Live, it does not require any teacher involvement. You could have every single kid in a general ed classroom using 1-Minute Reader Live, and the teacher would not be required to work with them. So it truly is an independent reading program. There are reports for both Read Naturally Live and 1-Minute Reader Live, including fluency, comprehension. There's phonics ones in Read Naturally Live. The main difference there, of course, is that Read Naturally Live has a teacher with the student, likely during the cold timing and for sure during the past timing. So that data, those fluency graphs and data is more reliable. 1-Minute Reader Live is based solely on a student inputting how they did, and so that portion of the reports maybe aren't quite as reliable. However, the comprehension report within 1-Minute Reader Live is, because it is a multiple choice, or 4 of the 5 questions are multiple choice, and so that data is valuable and accurate. So now let's talk about why the program works. Well, for one, it is very motivating. It's structured, and so it's great for developing readers who don't have direct teacher support. We all have times where we're asking our students to read independently. It's very important for them to be able to do that and to do that well. But we don't necessarily have the ability to work directly with the students. And so it is a highly effective instruction using the Read Naturally strategy, but it doesn't require that student to teacher ratio that is necessary in an intervention setting. Students using 1 Minute Reader Live can expect to show improvement on fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. As with all the programs in Read Live, 1 Minute Reader uses the Read Naturally strategy. So it uses teacher modeling. Students read along with audio support to learn words they don't know and to solidify high frequency words that are challenging. They do repeated reading, so they'll practice reading the same passage many times over and over. And they will do progress monitoring. The computer will show them the progress they make on cold timings and past timings and comprehension questions. And so those 3 strategies are part of all 4 of the programs that are within Read Live, including, of course, 1 Minute Reader Live. As I mentioned before, here are the 6 levels. As you can see, E is for early first grade. The rest of the levels are numbered with a number. So the number means that it's mid of that grade. So level 1 is mid first, level 2 is mid second, and so forth. The content available within 1 Minute Reader Live includes 8 books at each level. And each of those books has 5 nonfiction stories in it, and they're grouped kind of by themes. There's interactive vocabulary, so many words are blue and hyperlinked to definitions, so students can learn more words or have some support with vocabulary. They also have a point system that you'll get to see when I demo the program. And students earn points if they click on a keyword and listen to the entire definition. There's also a quick quiz. That's the portion of the data that is accurate because it's computer graded multiple choice questions, with the exception of the short answer question. So we do have one question at the end where students can type in a short answer. They do grade that one on their own. And then finally, we have some additional engaging activities like a joke jumble. So as students answer their quiz, letters fill in the joke jumble, and they enjoy finding out what that is after they complete all the stories in a book. After they complete all the stories in a book, they're also able to work on a crossword puzzle that has vocabulary that has been that was represented within the book that they're working in. They have a page called Did You Know, where they include some additional interesting facts about the topics that they read about in the given book. And then it's a more gamified experience than our other programs. They earn points. They have some of these additional fun activities. And so that makes it motivating and engaging for the students as well. 1 Minute Reader Live benefits readers of all ages who could use a structured independent reading program. It's motivating. It provides informational text for reluctant readers, and it provides challenging materials for young and advanced readers. So students can work in Read Naturally Live during an intervention time and use 1 Minute Reader Live during independent time at school or as homework. But it can also be used with those mainstream students who, the ones who don't disappear with a book for hours, which is most of them, right? They need more structure, they need more guidance than just a book provides during independent reading time. And so it really has a lot wider range of students that it can be used with. It is a more independent program, of course, in our interventions, right? It's designed to be. Placement is in there if you want, but it is not required. Students work more independently than in the other programs. And the program suggests content to students, but it doesn't restrict students. I'm going to show you in a little bit how you can narrow the levels that are available to students so that you can kind of ensure that what they're choosing from is fairly close to their reading level, but they can navigate between the ones that are presented to them with ease and without the support of the teacher. So let's talk about placing students for a moment. As I mentioned, placement is possible, but it is not required. Okay, so the first time a student logs in to 1 Minute Reader Live, they will be asked, this little pop-up window will appear and it would say, would you like to take a placement test? to help you select a level. So this is the little box that appears. The student can select no. If the student selects no, they will just skip the placement test. And if you have done nothing to their program, to their story options, they will be available, or all levels will be available to select for that student. The first one that's presented to them will be level E, the lowest level, but they will be able to move freely between any of the books. Now, if they skip placement, it doesn't mean they're not able to do placement at a different time, okay? So perhaps you want to use 1 Minute Reader Live as independent time. You can get your kids going immediately. As soon as they're added to the program, they have access to 1 Minute Reader Live, and they can start working. But if in a week or 2 weeks you do want to take them through placement or have them take themselves through placement, that is always available. So even if they select no at first, that doesn't mean they can't do it at some other point. The other option is to select yes, and then they can take the placement test. They can either do it by themselves, so student-led placement or teacher-led placement. Regardless of who is involved in the placement, they do the same thing. Okay, they select a level, they do a 1 minute timing, and then the computer will say, yep, this is a good fit, or no, why don't you try another level to see if it's a better fit. So what it looks like in the computer program is, again, that pop-up window that I just showed you. If the student selects yes, then the next screen that appears is a select a level. And it says that the audio support will say, select a level to begin placement. So estimate what level you think to start with placement. So most likely a second grader is going to see 2 and think, oh, I'm going to start with 2. But whatever they start with, if they take it through, it will bring them to a place. It will, might have them try lower next, or it might have them try higher next based on how they do. After they select the level and click next, then they are presented with a passage at that level. The audio support instructions tell them what to do. It says click start timing and begin reading. And then when the bell sounds, that tells them to click the last word they read when the bell sounded, and the computer will say how many words they attempted. When they click next, the program will say, this level seems like a good fit, or it will say, tested a different level. This isn't quite the right spot for you. Okay. Now, just because level 2 is the right fit for this student doesn't mean they can't access level 3 or level 1. They can. Again, you can limit that, and I'll show you how to do that later. But and it doesn't mean that you can't take them through it at some point too. So even if a student takes themselves through placement, you can take them through it at a later date if you want. In the handout that you have, we have the a little takeaway that lists the instructions for teacher-led or student-led placement. It's the same regardless of who's in there. All you're doing is selecting a level, doing a 1 minute timing, and then the computer will recommend whether or not it's a good fit. So now we're on to our third item on our task list today, which is how 1 Minute Reader Live works. So here are a list of the steps that students go through when they're working in 1 Minute Reader Live. The first thing they do is they get to pick a story, and students have a lot of choice when using 1 Minute Reader Live. Not only can they navigate between levels, they can navigate between the 8 different books, and then each book has 5 stories. So each level includes 40 stories, and the students get to choose which one they work on. The first thing they do is a cold timing. And so they read for 1 minute and they get a score. And that is really motivating for students because they see where they're at, and then they want to beat it, right? It's kind of like a PlayStation or video game effect, if you will. The next thing they do is read along with audio support. So if there are words in the cold timing that they didn't realize they read incorrectly, they will learn that during the read along portion. So they get that audio support that, of course, a regular book wouldn't provide them with. Step 4 is that they read alone, which is like a practice step. So they can practice reading the passage multiple times. Each time the score they got fills in a little bubble, and you'll see that when I go through the demonstration. But that's really motivating for a student because they love to see that they get better. And so they can continue to practice until they think they've gotten as well as they can get, or maybe they're just ready to go on to the quick quiz. And so the quiz is 4 multiple choice, and then there is a short answer question. Okay, and all the while they're doing these steps, they're earning points, which of course is motivating for students as well. Here you can see at the top part of this poster is the 1 Minute Reader Live Steps poster. This is available on our website in PDF format if you're interested in printing it off or just locating it for yourself or your students. So now we're going to talk about getting started. Okay, so the things you need to do to get started is you need to make sure your student has access to Read Live, right? So they have to have a license within Read Live. And I'll show you where to do that or where to make sure they have that. If they're not in Read Live, you need to add them as a student. They can place themselves, you can place them, or you can skip it. Okay, so all of those are options. They need to have licenses, and then you need to teach the students the steps. Okay, so I'm going to show you setup. After I show you setup, I'm going to show you the student steps that the students go through. Okay, so we'll be in a demonstration portion now for a while. First at the back end, meaning the staff end, and then we will navigate over to the student end so you can see what it looks like in order to get it set up as a teacher, as well as what it looks like when students are actually using it. So let's navigate out of this PowerPoint and into the Read Live account. So of course, a staff member, when they're logging in, as you know, they click on the staff member button and enter their account ID, their user ID, and their password and click login. When you go to the home page, you can see all of the tiles that are available. 1 Minute Reader Live is one that we can go to find out whether or not a student has access to 1 Minute Reader Live. So that may be the first thing you do. Let's assume that you have some students who are already in the account and have a license, but you're not sure if they have access to 1 Minute Reader Live. There was a change recently over the summer where any student who is added this fall, so added in late summer or August or September, will automatically be granted access to 1 Minute Reader Live. But if the student was added sometime during the school year last year or 2 years ago, that student maybe doesn't have access to 1 Minute Reader Live. They didn't get it automatically. So you do want to check that. So we're going to go ahead to the upper left-hand corner where the drop-down navigation tool appears, and we'll click on the 1 Minute Reader Live option. And here I can see a list of my students. As you can see over on the right, there's a column that says OMR access. So if you want to see who has access, it will say yes in the column if they do. Clicking on that one time will pull up all the students who do not have access first. So I can see that these students need access. If I want to give them all access, I can select the top and the bottom while holding down the Shift key, and it should highlight everybody. There we go. And we can click Add OMR access to this entire group. Okay, or you can do it just 1 or 2 students at a time, whatever makes the most sense for you. So if you discover that your student isn't even in here and you need to add them, you would then, of course, go back to the drop-down menu and go to student setup, right? That makes sense. That's where you would have to start when you're wanting to get new students into the program. So you select student setup and you're brought to a page that has the students who are listed. Now, it's possible your student's in there without a license, so discovering that would be able to be done easily by clicking on the column titled RNL license. It's on the right-hand side of the screen I'm showing. And when you click on that, you can see these students do not have a license and the rest of them do. Clicking on their last name will allow you to license the student and assign them a lead teacher. Notice when I clicked yes to license the student, they automatically got access to Read Naturally Live. It's grayed out because I can't deselect it. So they have access, and I'm at this point unable to turn that program off. And then automatically 1 Minute Reader Live is selected. I can choose to not allow them to access it, but by default, it is accessible to the student. If I were to add a new student, the same thing would happen. We can see that when the student is put in a grade, given a school, and again, when you click yes to license that student, so this is a new student adding, they're automatically given access to Read Naturally Live and 1 Minute Reader Live. And then you can choose to select additional programs or deselect 1 Minute Reader Live. So I'm going to go back into the 1 Minute Reader Live tile because I do want to mention for you some of the features that you're available to adjust. And this can be done before a student starts working in the program or after a student's working in 1 Minute Reader Live, and even while they're working in 1 Minute Reader Live. So I'm going to show you how to do it from this back end staff module right now. And then when I'm going through the student steps, I'll show you how to do it from that end as well. So let's start by bringing ourselves back to that 1 Minute Reader Live option on our drop-down menu here. And I can see that there's a blue button in the upper left-hand corner that says Change Story Options for Selected. Okay, so if I select a student's name from my list and click on that button, I'm presented with story options for a student. So in this case, if I wanted, I could turn off levels that I knew were way too easy for this student. Perhaps this is a 4th grade student and you think they're reading pretty close to grade level. You might decide to turn off the early first, the mid first, and the mid second, but leave the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade levels on because that's closer to where that student's reading. Okay. If you don't do that, that's fine. When the student logs in, they'll just have more selection. And so if that becomes a problem, you can go in and change it at a later date. But I just want you to be aware that that is possible to do before they even begin working in the program. The other adjustments that are in here have to do with the number of required read-alongs. The default is 1, but you can change it from 0 to 3. And the required number of read alone, which is practice. And the default is at 2, but you can change that from 1 to 5. Okay. So this is how you can change it from the staff module. You can do that before students start working in the program. You can also change it from the staff module at any point while they're using 1 Minute Reader Live. And I'm going to show you now the student module. And so while I'm in there, I will at some point show you how you can make the change when the student's working. So a lot of times we don't realize there's an issue until the student's actually working in the program. And then we see, oh, that shouldn't be that way. And so I'll show you how you can make that adjustment if that's what happens with you. Okay, so I'm going to open a new tab over to the right, and I'm going to log in as a student now. And I'm going to walk through the steps that the students go through when they're using 1 Minute Reader Live. So a student, of course, clicks on student, enters their user ID and password, and clicks login. And now this particular student has access to all 4 programs. Okay, so all 4 of those boxes were checked underneath the licensing portion on the adding the student. Okay. If I had only selected Read Naturally Live and 1 Minute Reader Live, these 2 programs would not be available to the student. Okay, so this student can only access all 4 because I granted the student access to all 4, right? So today we're focusing on 1 Minute Reader Live, so we can go ahead and select that option.
Please select a book.
As we can see, this student's name is Molly, and she's going to be working in 1 Minute Reader Live. This level is level 2. She has already logged in and worked in some stories. So that's why that placement didn't pop up automatically. But notice it's still here. At any point, the student or the teacher can choose to take themselves through placement by clicking on that.
Select a level and then click Next to begin testing.
Okay, so the student can take themselves through this placement if they choose to. Or at any point, if you realize, oh, I want to do placement with that student, you can take them through that placement.
Please select a book.
So we'll have Molly go ahead and select a book. You'll notice that all the levels are noted down here at the bottom. So level E, level 1, level 2, and so forth. Okay. There's 8 books at each of these levels, and in each book is 5 stories. We'll go back into the Amazing Athletes book.
Please select a story.
And we'll have Molly walk through the story about Carl Lewis so that you can see the steps of 1 Minute Reader Live.
Click Start Timing and begin reading. Click on the words you don't know to hear them read to you. Click Finished if you finish reading before the bell sounds.
So you'll notice that there is a toolbar at the top. Right now it's pointing to cold read. So the first thing students do is a cold timing. So the student comes to this page, they click Start Timing, and now they're reading this passage. I always like my students, even when they're doing this, to be reading whisper reading, so moving their lips. That is something that I like to have to encourage students to do even during independent reading time. But as they read, if the student is unsure of a word or just wants to hear it read, they can click on any and every word.
Measure, set, yet.
Okay, so they can get the support they need. Those words are read for the student so that they can hear how the word is read properly. Now, this is based on what the student enters into the program. So will the cold timing score be 100% accurate? Absolutely not, right? Even if they're trying their best to be 100% accurate, they're not going to realize sometimes when they make a mistake, okay? But that's okay, because the very next step they do after the cold timing is they read along with audio support. So even if they read a word incorrectly once during the cold timing, after they read along with that audio support, they'll notice that there was a mistake and fix it.
Click on the last word you read when the bell sounded.
So now the student clicks on the last word they attempted when that bell sounded.
Click Next to continue.
We can see this is the words per minute score. So 52 is how many the student attempted.
Look at how many words per minute you read.
So now we can see that blue graph. And for those of you who are familiar with using Read Naturally Live, this looks very familiar to you. One thing you might notice that's different is there's no specific goal at the top, right? So we have a cold timing score, and in Read Naturally Live, that's nice because we can compare it to the goal, to what the past timing story goal is. There isn't a specific goal in 1 Minute Reader Live, right? We don't want them stuck and unable to go on if they don't reach something specific, because this is an independent program. So they're listed with their cold timing, their baseline for progress monitoring, and then they can go on to the read along step to be sure that they're reading the words correctly.
Click Start Read Along to read along, or click Next to continue.
Now, remember how I showed you those story options that you can adjust. The default is one story option. I have adjusted it so that we don't have to hear the whole story read. But your students, if you do nothing, your students will be required to read along with the audio support once. They will be allowed and able to read along more if they choose to, and you can adjust that. Notice that there's a number of words that are hyperlinked, or they're blue, if they are hyperlinked to definition. So if a student clicks on this word, a box pops up, the word is read, a definition is read, and the student earns 50 points every time they click on the word. You'll notice the points in the upper right-hand corner. So far, all the student has done is the cold timing. So all the student has earned is 100 points. Okay. What I really like about our point system is that it emphasizes the things that educators care about, right? So what I mean by that is the way to earn the most points is to do well on the quiz. So students who get a comprehension quiz question correct the first time they attempt it, they get 1,000 points for one quiz question, whereas they only earn 100 points for doing the cold timing. So they quickly learn what they will need to do in order to earn the most points. And so that's one way that we kind of hope to shift their focus away from rate, and over to what is the most important part of reading, of course, is comprehension. So that's why those quiz question point system is weighed so much heavier than the other steps.
Click Start Timing and begin reading. Click Finished if you finish the story before the bell sounds.
So now the students on the read alone, or the practice step, okay, students read, they have to read by default twice. They have to practice at least twice. They can practice more than that. Many students do. I think because there are 4 bubbles, there's a fair number of them who think they need to fill in all 4 bubbles. And I'm not going to tell them different, right? That's fine. They can practice over and over. That repetition is what builds their automaticity. What they like about it is every number in these little bubbles is higher. And so they get to literally, in as quick as a minute, see that they can get better. And so it's very intrinsically motivating that way. If they're unsure of words during this step,
Olympics.
they can still click on those words. So they're still getting support if they need it during that practice step. And the score that is graphed is just the final practice. So the last practice they do before they go on to the quiz, that is the practice score that will be graphed on that cold and hot score graph that we'll see in a minute. So it's not a specific goal.
Click on the last word you read when the bell sounded.
It's not a specific goal. It's just the last, most recent practice score.
Click Start Timing to see if you can improve your score. Or click Next to save this as your hot timing and continue.
So we're allowed to go on even though we only practiced once, again, because I made those changes to the story options that I showed you previously. So we're going to go ahead and go on to the quick quiz.
Look at how many words per minute you read.
So a student earn points for the, how much progress they make from cold to hot timing. And then we can go on after viewing this. They really do like to see this graph. Then they'll get to go to those quiz.
Click the best answer for each quiz question. As you answer questions correctly, their letters will fill in the blanks in the joke jumble. Click Show Story to see the story again.
So notice that students can go back and look in the story. We want to encourage that, right? It's a good strategy for them to practice. As they answer questions, as the audio support told you, letters will fill in. The question, this joke jumble is, why was Cinderella a bad basketball player? Get the audio sound that we're correct. We also get the visual confirmation as the letters move over. If you get it wrong, there's a different sound. The letters don't move over, and it stays highlighted, and the student has to fix it. So when the student clicks next, they're brought back to the same question, and they have to get it right in order for them to go on. The answer to why was Cinderella a bad basketball player is, if you're not sure yet, most of you probably know it's because she ran away from the ball. All right, so now we have one short answer.
Type your answer, then click Next.
One letter will allow them to go on. Okay, so they won't get stuck here if they don't want to be. And if you want to allow them or tell them that's fine to skip, that's just fine. Otherwise, they are presented with the answer when they click Next.
Was your answer correct? Check your answer and click Yes or No.
They have the answer
Then
key here.
click Next.
They have the answer key here, and then they grade themselves. So sometimes you can imagine many of them are going to be very lenient on their scores, but those first four questions are accurate because they are multiple choice and the computer grades them.
Look at your results from this story. Click Next to continue.
We can see we have points listed here for this book. Here we can see the computer graded quiz question, so that is valuable and accurate information. The computer does not do anything with the points, but I suggest you do. A couple good things to include are not just keeping track of students' individual points. You can have a reward system for, students who earn a certain number of points in a week, get some sort of a prize or reward. Also, a good thing to do is have group prizes. So if the whole class earns a certain number of points, then the whole class gets something. That peer pressure to stay on task and to do well is a nice way to encourage students to work in the program as well.
Look at your results from this book. Click Next to continue.
As you can see, we also have all the information from the book. So the last graph was a story summary. This is a book summary. I can see the main idea. She's doing very well. Details, she's missed one of the four. Vocab, she's got all of them right. Inference, she's only getting them right half the time. So that tells me there might be an issue with inference. So this data in this book comprehension report is valuable. The kids love these bar graphs, but we don't know how accurate those are, but that comprehension information certainly is.
Please select a story.
Now you can see the student can go on and pick another book in this, another story in this book. But if she's sick of reading, and if she does, so if she picks the Tanya book, if she picks the Tanya story, after finishing the Tanya story, the crossword puzzle will unlock, okay? Otherwise, if she's sick of reading about athletes,
please select a book.
She can go on and pick another book.
Please select a story.
Okay. Or
please select a book.
If she thinks, gosh, I'm doing well, I'm going to try a book and a story in level 3. She can move up to that. Now, I promised I'd show you how you can make adjustments when the student is logged into the program. In Read Naturally Live and Word Warm-Ups Live, there's a button that says Teacher with a picture of an apple on it, and that's how you can make changes on the fly. Well, in 1 Minute Reader Live, we have a little gear, and you click Options, and the teacher login screen comes up. And you can adjust the number of required read-alongs, you can adjust the number of required read-along loans, and you can turn on and off levels depending on what the specific needs are of the student. Okay, so again, that's that gear picture that teachers can access these story options from.
Please select a book.
All right, so we're going to pop back into the PowerPoint now. And just to let you know, there are some other fun features in there, including the Did You Know? So there's additional fun and interesting facts about the different topics within the books that students can take a look at. And of course, that crossword puzzle, I did want to show you a little bit what that looks like. So after the student completes all 5 stories in a book, that crossword puzzle is unlocked. Vocabulary from the stories in the book appear in the crossword puzzle. When a student clicks on a question, a box appears with all of the options. And so clicking on the option then it will fill into the appropriate area. And notice that they do get grayed out when they've already been used. So you can see now there's many of them have been filled in. And so as you would expect, many of the words are now lighter and not able to be clicked on. So I'm going to go ahead and just talk about the various needs that the program meets. It's really ideal for independent reading time, homework, summer reading. Anyone who could benefit from additional practice who's in an intervention, or any mainstream student. It's often used over summer breaks. At the beginning of the school year, it is ideal for students to use during placement. So if students are being placed into the interventions, they can work in 1 Minute Reader Live immediately with no teacher support, and that frees the teacher up to do those placements that are required. When students are working in both programs, typically 1 Minute Reader Live is used during independent practice. As I mentioned before, it can be used when students are being placed in Read Naturally Live, or it can be used for additional practice outside of school during breaks or as homework. Here is another example of that story summary we saw after the athlete's story and book were finished. I also just want to mention some of the reports. So when you log into the staff module and go to the home page, there's a tile in a drop-down menu called reports. When you select that, you're presented first with some administrative reports and then reports for the 4 different programs. So of course, if you're trying to get 1 Minute Reader Live reports, you're going to select 1 Minute Reader Live. Then you can select Students at a Glance. Report if you choose. The Students at a Glance is a great report because it provides you with averages. So it shows you how the student did on average on the first 3 stories they've done, and it compares it to how they did on the most recent 3 stories for cold timing, number of practices, final timing, and their comprehension. So that is good and valuable data. As we mentioned before, you can adjust those numbers of required read-alongs, numbers of required read-alones, as well as the levels you can turn on or off for each individual student, depending on their needs. It's not essential, but you're able to. We have lots of resources on our website, so please go to the help page. It's just readnaturally.com. /read-live-help. It's at the lower corner of your screen right now. We have a video called Working with Students in 1 Minute Reader Live. We also have student training videos. So if you go to the student training or go to the readnaturally.com website and hover over the training header, you'll see in the drop-down menu about halfway down a student training video. So there's one for 1 Minute Reader Live, as well as all the other programs in Read Live. So if you need some help in training the students how to do the steps properly, please go there to look. So thank you so much for your attention today. I really appreciate you coming, and please reach out to us when questions arise throughout the school year. Thanks again, and have a great day.